Hey everyone, Temporal here, and today we are covering the topic of why Mercy can't be meta. And for those of you that are wondering what this is us going into, hey, we've seen Mercy. Mercy is an extremely popular hero. A lot of players main her, one trick her, that sort of thing. One of the most played heroes, but it's really been a couple years since we've seen her in a hard meta type status. And her lack of play in the organized professional scene, well, it's not non-existent. There was the Moth meta, the famous Mercy meta, and there's been other situational uses for her. You're generally pretty quick to see a swap off of her from a Mercy to a Brig, that sort of thing. Or she comes out, but she only comes out for like a specific control point. Or, okay, she's coming out, but only in very small situational type spots. So what's going on? What's the story here? Why are we not seeing more Mercy? She's one of the three main supports. We should be looking at that and saying, hey, Mercy, one of three main supports. We end up in a situation, oh, you guys saw my notes there, that's fine. We end up in a situation where, you know, Brig is the dive support, Lucio is the brawl support, and Mercy is the poke support. That's what we should be looking at, right? Well, that's not what we've seen. So to explore this, let's start by looking at the metas that she's existed in. And her most known meta, her most famous meta, was of course the Moth meta. This is what we saw over at the beginning of Overwatch League, that first season, for the first three stages or 3/4 of the season there. She was incredibly powerful. She could hit multiple reses per Valk. Her Valk lasted longer. I believe she got more health regen per second in Valk than she had now. She had faster reses. Her res went down to a 10-second cooldown. Like, okay. Just picking people back up willy-nilly, just making her broken powerful, makes her really good, and yes, she will be meta. That will be true of anyone. If you make McCree do 300 damage per bullet, Cassidy will be meta. If you make Reinhardt have 1,000 armor health as part of his health pool, he will be meta. We can just break the numbers and force anything to be in the meta. But that's not really what we're trying to explore here. What would it take for her to healthily be meta? What would it take for, hey, when we're in a meta that she should be good in, like a poke meta, for example, she's going to be played, that sort of thing. That's really what we're looking at here. So if she's broken powerful, she works. Even in a dive meta, which is mostly what the Moth meta was, you could call it a dive poke hybrid meta, but a dive meta, that shouldn't be her strongest meta, because she should be in a situation where it's hard to get reses off during dives. A dive happens, you lose someone. She really should be better in poke metas where, she can use her res, and res is sort of one of her forms of peel there. And that's harder in brawl metas, in dive metas, whatever. She was just brute force powerful enough that she was going to be played in it. Okay. So where else have we seen Mercy? Well, we've seen Mercy in Double Sniper. Following the Moth meta for the playoffs, we actually had a sniper meta there. That makes sense. Mercy would make sense in those. That's actually where she's at her best. We look at a sniper meta and we go, hey, people are getting one shot at range. She can boost that person. If that person doesn't get one shot, she can heal them, and she can res them with no one contesting the res. That is like Mercy's dream of how that hero works. It might not be players of Mercy's dream of how that works, but because it's not terribly engaging, but from a design perspective, that is how Mercy peels. Those of you who aren't aware, what Mercy, or what we would look at here, is Lucio can actually peel. If I put a Lucio here, Lucio peels against Brawl for his other support or for his team. Let's give him an Ana, for example. Lucio helps peel by helping keep his team away from Brawl. So he can peel against Brawl. Now he also gets used in Brawl, but in theory he has this ability to peel against Brawl between his boop and his speed there to help keep someone away. Brig, unsurprisingly, does a pretty good job of peeling against Dive. So let's get a Dive hero in here, like a Genji, and a Genji comes in, and dive heroes are less powerful, less raw power than Brawl heroes in that close range, but they generally have the tools to get in, and then they have some sort of burst combo. Like Tracer has the one clip. but then has a pretty meaningfully long reload. Genji can hit shurikens and then go into a dash and can pretty quickly finish someone off. But if they survive that dash, he's kind of stuck, he's kind of empty, he's kind of in bad shape, that sort of thing. Winston, again, has that ability to land on someone, zap them, but then as soon as that clip runs out, he's kind of short, he's kind of not going to be able to take them out. If he doesn't take them out quickly, it doesn't really work for him if he's trying to solo someone. If he's trying to work as part of a coordinated dive, you get it. The point is, Brig breaks up these dives by going, hey, I provide enough healing to make it tough between the Inspire plus the repair packs, and then potentially a stun and a whip shot at Boop as well. And that's more than enough to disrupt much of a dive and be like, hey, one or two divers aren't really going to be able to take this person down because she disrupts the burst window that divers need to hit. Okay, that makes sense. So then if we in theory look at, oh, that's the wrong one. Then if in theory we look at someone like Widow, let's get ourselves a Widow, and then let's get ourselves a Mercy. Mercy, wrong color, Mercy. Mercy can look at this and go, it doesn't have to be your support, it can be anyone. They get one shot by a Widow, or they get poked out by a Widow, and her version of peeling against that poke, yes, sure, she heals people up like either of the other supports would have peeled someone up, but she goes, I peel against poke win conditions, eliminating someone before the brawl phase starts, before the mid-fight starts, by going, nope, let me bring them right back up. So that's, in some ways you could think of Rez as her primary piece of peel. And it got used even in the Moth meta, in part because she could hit it faster, in part because she got a silly number of them. That's the case there. But then in double sniper type metas, that makes absolute sense for her. People get eliminated before the mid-fight has started, before people can really collapse, and she can turn one of those around. That should be a great meta for her from a design perspective, and it mostly has been. Problem is, we don't have such strong snipers anymore. Widow has been nerfed mercilessly, and I think most people are fans of that. We've seen, hey, Widow, when Widow had 200 HP, when Widow had a shorter grapple cooldown, when Widow had a little bit better charge time for her shots between shots, she was a menace, and a lot of people felt like, hey, this game is decided by which team has the better Widowmaker. It was never quite that simple. There were things you could do to tilt the Widowmaker battle a lot from other positions, but ultimately your Widowmaker did have to hit those shots. You could make those shots much easier for your Widowmaker and much harder for their Widowmaker, but basically no one really likes a strong Widowmaker. No one, except the people playing Widow. So we saw that. Likewise, we saw Ashe get nerfed. Ashe wasn't around for, the double sniper I'm using in my example here, but Ashe got nerfed to the point of, no, we're going to break the Mercy Ashe one-shot combo, which again, that's something that made Mercy a little bit better in that she created the one-shot combo, and having ranged one-shot combos on the board is good for the value of Mercy's res. Not so much looking at that here. Because we can see, we have moved away from that. Hanzo, yes, Hanzo still one-shots people. Hanzo still one-shots people. Hanzo still exists. Widow still one-shots people. Don't get me wrong, but Widow is a much more compromised hero and is much less likely to take over, let alone fit into a meta right now, and probably isn't going to be buffed to a place where she retakes over metas anytime soon. So double sniper type metas, those can be good for Mercy. Probably not the healthiest thing for the game, though. So, Moth meta, sure, breaker numbers, it'll work for Mercy, great. Double sniper, but we don't really want to break the game. We'd like her to fit into metas that she works in, not just go, hey, buff her to Oblivion. Double sniper, that's good for her, isn't terribly good for the game. I think the devs are unlikely to go there again. I think most of the player base wouldn't actually want us to go there again. And I'm going to be honest, I think most Mercy players don't actually find that type of play terribly engaging. So I don't really think that makes anyone happy except for the sniper players. Okay, well, what else is she seeing? We're going to go over to some of the more gimmicky comps now. We'll come back to Zen Ball in a moment. We'll go over to some of the more gimmicky comps. There has been what we will call undivable comp. So I put this over here as no target. That's great. These are mostly comps where you see the dreaded support line of Lucio and Mercy, which is a terror whenever you see it on your team, but it does have a niche use, and that would be if you're playing against a team and you go, hey, we have Mercy, Lucio, Pharah, Tracer, D.Va, and then Winston or Hammond, there's nothing for the opponents to commit on. They can't run it over with a Brawl comp, maybe like a Reinhardt May Reaper comp, has no targets that it can get on, while the Pharmercy just outvalues it, or maybe a dive comp, like a Tracer Genji comp, has nothing that it can commit on to try to dive. Well, again, the Pharmercy just outvalues it. And yes, the Lucio is not doing a terribly good job of healing up the rest of his team. The Mercy can't keep up with the rest of the team. This comp just breaks apart and does not work if the other team has good poke or good poke and pretty good bulk. It just doesn't work. So it's a gimmicky comp. It exists. It's used sometimes, but it's mostly we're going to put this comp on the field to make the other team prove that they know how to solve it. It's not a terribly hard solve, but it can feel weird. By the way, if you guys run into this in your ladder games, the solution, again, bulky poke will win it for you, but the solution beyond that is literally just do damage to these guys. Do not fall for going for these guys right here, your Lucio and Mercy. Just do damage to the tanks or even to the other DPS and go, yeah, you're not going to keep up, and it will not hold up. But that's fine. That's more of a prove to us that you know how to beat it thing. Kind of gimmicky. It's actually in even worse shape now because this, hey, there's nothing you can dive comp has been replaced by something more flexible and a bit better, which would be 6-man. You can't dive 6-man until it's used its cooldowns. They just have the option to leave. Moira can fade away. Lucio can, of course, ride walls and get away. Tracer, Reaper, Sombra, they can all get out. Winston, D.Va, those characters can get out with their jump packs and boosters. Again, it plays very differently, but it's a more flexible comp. It's a more flexible comp. It's really a better comp, and it uses a Lucio Moira to accomplish that same undive ability as opposed to the Lucio Mercy here. So this isn't really a place for Mercy to exist, and it's kind of gimmicky in the first place. Then we could go down to some more historic type stuff here. Oh, no, those are our more general comps. We could talk about some other comps that have happened. Like if we go back pre-Owl, we could talk about, hey, even a little into the beginning of Owl, Pharmercy used to get run on some specific Koth maps pretty frequently, maybe with a Zen, maybe with a Lucio. Those are fine. Those do an okay job, but those have mostly been left behind, I would say, in favor of people have just gotten better. Hit scan players have gotten better over time, that sort of thing. Later, we added Echo, who's a bit more flexible while being more independent, which isn't terribly good news for Mercy. Don't get me wrong, Echo loves a Mercy, but Echo isn't as Mercy dependent, isn't nearly as Mercy dependent as Pharah is, for example. We've seen sort of, hit scan players have just gotten better and better over time, making, again, Pharah in some ways a less good pick. We saw quite a bit of it in the pre-Owl professional scene, a little bit into that. We could also go back even further and talk about back when your support line was Zen, Mercy, Lucio, Symmetra. Yeah, Mercy got run quite a bit as a support, but that's not really real. We're not going to recreate those situations. We're not going to delete supports from the game. Though I know there's some people in my chat who are probably saying, delete Brig. There you go, Semitic. And if you deleted heroes, yes, that would cause us to get to more Mercy playtime. So that leaves us with two real comps that I want to explore here. We could talk about a third, and maybe we'll get to that as well. But the more modern solutions that we've seen is, hey, about a year ago at this point, the Zen Ball comp really took over. It's been pretty meta again more recently than that. But the version of this that I'm talking about is, hey, you've got a Zenyatta, you've got a Hammond, and then you've got a Tracer, and to go with that Tracer, you've got yourself either a Echo or an Ashe. This is what you saw about a year and a half ago all the time. This was the comp, and it's a good, flexible comp. There's nothing wrong with it. And Mercy is great with both of those heroes. At the time, she enabled an Ashe one-shot, and she also enabled Echo as a flyer. She could go into the sky with Echo getting a pocket as she does focusing beam shenanigans. Fantastic, works well. The thing is, even with either hero that would get used in that slot benefiting quite nicely from a Mercy, she got used about a third of the time. Some teams would use her, But most of the time, even just another tracer, so much as existing on the other side of the board, would be enough to go, nope, our Zen is too important. We have to keep our Zen alive. Bring the Brig. The Brig will keep our Zen alive, and the Brig will do some level of support for the Echo. Not as much, but some level of support for the Echo. So even when we've got these great Mercy heroes, Mercy still isn't really being played here. Is that a Brig is just too good? Well, maybe this is a Brig is just too good type thing. On the other hand, this is a dive comp. It's a dive poke hybrid, but it's more of a dive comp. Maybe with Sigma, it's a truly even hybrid, but that seems somewhat reasonable. You're taking an extreme support in Zen who's very fragile, and then you're covering that weakness, and maybe you need Brig to cover that weakness instead of Zen. Maybe that's okay. Let's come back to that one. So then you can get over to some of the double shield stuff. This would be similar to what you'd have seen in Owl this last season when you saw some Mercy, though there were some other variants that you saw it in. This is the sort of place that is probably naturally the healthiest for Mercy. But most of when she existed was either a case of, hey, Tracer has been banned. Oh, if Tracer's been banned, there's more way to fit other things in here. Or situations where there was a fresh hit scan nerf, and because there's a fresh hit scan nerf, we're going to try out a lot of Flyers, a lot of Echo, a lot of Pharah before we realize, they can still somewhat be handled by hit scan. It's maybe not as bad as we thought. That's pretty normal after a patch to go, hey, let's go ahead and try the thing that should now be freed, or try the thing that should be stronger because its check got nerfed, and that can cause something to be the meta, even if the meta then naturally shifts away from it. And you have seen the meta has naturally shifted away from that. You certainly still see plenty of Echo play. For those of you who are curious, you can check out my Which DPS Should You Learn Right Now video on the channel. I just did that a couple days ago, and Echo's definitely still a good DPS to be learning, still a DPS that sees lots of play, but ultimately, the Echo, the Pharah, the Pharmacy, the Echo Mercy, that's mostly didn't really stick, and we're still mostly back in we see some Zen Ball, we see some double shield, but we see that double shield, as we see here, with combinations like Zen plus BAP, or BAP plus Brig. When we see these double shield comps come out, these true poke comps come out, outside of, hey, we're really heavily experimenting with Flyers, again, because of bans, because of recent nerfs that maybe aren't so much that we have to overall, we discover that getting the raw greed of BAP Zen is mostly going to be better than going, hey, let's run BAP plus Mercy or Zen plus Mercy, either one of those. And why is that? Why is that the case? Well, once again, we don't really have those one-shots in this game. So if you don't really have those one-shots in this game, the chip damage of, say, BAP, the sustained chip damage of BAP, really good. The sustained damage of Zen, really good. The Discord, really good. When you can hit breakpoints for one-shots, Mercy becomes better. When one-shots happen towards your team, and you therefore need to res people rather than heal them, Mercy again comes good. But if you're not going, hey, this is going to cause us to eliminate someone, but instead we eliminate someone in 2 to 3 shots, well, having more total damage from your Zen and your BAP becomes comparably more attractive. So that's a problem for her, but the answer to that should be, oh, well, they should just be vulnerable enough that a Tracer shows up, or a Tracer and Ball show up, and just destroy them and force the swaps. Well, the problem is they're not. If you look at Zen plus BAP, yes, that's a greedy support line. It's replaced the Zen Ana greedy support line that you used to occasionally see, in terms of, actually having a place, though definitely being greedy. But it can exist, and why it's replaced the Zen Ana greedy support line is BAP does a pretty good job of peeling for Zen, and BAP is pretty durable himself. If you jump a Zen, BAP can heal that Zen pretty darn well. Can certainly peel for it better than Ana could. Ana's like, well, I can heal you and I can shoot a sleep dart. Maybe that'll work. And while I'm healing you, I'm not shooting at the Tracer that's on you. And I've got a pretty slow rate of fire. Or whereas BAP can go, yeah, I can weave between healing the Zen and shooting the Tracer, and I can pop my regenerative burst to give you an extra 75 HP to drag this fight out, and if I need to, I can lamp, and by the way, I do a lot of damage to this Tracer, and you Discord this Tracer, and we make it leave real quick. So that's a bit of a thing. And then, well, what about Bap's frail? What about Bap being frail? Because, like, Anna was also frail if you ran a Zen Anna support line. Well, okay, that isn't really a thing either. Bap, again, gets a 150 HP heal out of his shift, can still use that lamp on himself, can take high ground pretty easily for the reposition. A Bap that is using his regenerative burst and has a harmony orb on him is not going down easily. Can you dive hard enough to destroy this support line? You absolutely can dive hard enough to destroy the support line, and this is still a greedy support line, but it's pretty darn durable for a greedy support line. For a greedy support line that doesn't have a main support, it's pretty darn durable. And here's the thing, if you go, okay, this was too greedy, we need to go ahead and harden our support line, you're gonna go to Brig, not Mercy. It's like, if you looked at these in terms of tiers, where it would be like, okay, this is our greedy support line, our Zen Bap right here, and then a tiny bit less greedy would be Bap Mercy, or maybe Zen Mercy, maybe, and it would maybe do a tiny bit less greedy, a tiny bit more durable, but it would be, how shall I put this? It would be a tiny bit more durable, but only do a little bit, let me rephrase this. It would be a tiny bit more durable, but it would do a fair bit less damage. So like your output, the value of what you're getting would be not that much better than, it's not that much better. How do I want to put this? You lose a fair amount of output in exchange for, hey, we're a little bit more durable. And that's not really a trade that works. So you, of course, go, hey, if we want to be more durable, we move over to this Brig here. So the Mercy, sorry I explained that poorly, doesn't have a great place that she can exist in there. And this really is where she should most healthily for the game exist, unfortunately. And it's not. So what's the problem, and what do I mean by this? This is the most place she should most healthily exist. Well, to get into that, and for those of you that have questions, I will catch up in just a moment, I promise. I'm wrapping up here with the discussion part, then I'll take questions. Here we have our three main archetypes of how the game is played. And we've got Brawl right here, we've got Dive right here, and we have Poke right here. And obviously you can find comps that are sort of between these, sort of exist as greater hybrids. Some of these are already hybrids, but you can greater hybridize. Like you can go with a Winston Rusher 6-man comp, and that's a hybrid between a Brawl and a Dive. You can go with a Double Bubble, and you can get hybrids from those as well. But if we think of these as the three main archetypes of how the game is played, and even their natural forms are pretty hybridized in this era in Overwatch, we're going to find Brawl comps use as their main support Lucio, and very occasionally Brig. But like 95% of the time, they use Lucio. That makes sense. You can look at Atlanta. They'll mix in the Brig there. They can do some stuff where they specifically know that they're up against divers. They're not too worried about Poke. They know the map geometry allows them to get away with it, that sort of thing. So they can sneak the Brig in there. That sort of greeting in a bit of a different way. But okay, that would be the standard. 95% of the time, Brawl is using Lucio. Then we look at a Dive comp, and we talked about this where even when we had the one-shot on Ashe, even when we had Echo as a very regular pick in this, we were still looking at the vast majority of the time, Brig is the pick here. Brig might not have that 95% pick rate in Brawl that Lucio does, but Brig probably has like 70% pick rate. Really, Brig is the support for Dive. Lucio is the support for Brawl. So for Poke, our main support should be Mercy. But as we already talked about with Double Shield, it's really not. Your main support becomes Brig, Zen, whatever you want to think about it. Excuse me. Brig, Zen, Bap, whatever combination you want to think is the main support there. You're probably running a Bap plus Zen or a Bap plus Brig there. Yes, you could maybe get into like an Anna plus Mercy if you're leaning super hard into the flyer thing, that sort of thing. It can be done. But really, you're probably looking at this. So we're in this situation where it's like, for one out of the three major archetypes, Lucio gets run. For 1.5 out of 3 of the major archetypes, Brig gets run. And for that last half of the remaining major archetypes, Zen, Bap Zen, whatever gets run. So what does that mean? What's the answer? Well, There's a couple ways we can do this. Again, we can buff Mercy just to be incredibly strong, but that's not really the solution. We can make snipers super strong. I don't think anyone's really going to like that. We can make flyers really, really strong, but I think the middle of the ladder and the bottom part of the ladder and most of the middle of the ladder would absolutely hate that. They would hate, oh, look, flyers tearing apart the game. The hit scan at this level can't aim. Maybe the divas can do a good job of zoning them out, but she's a lot less good against Echo than Pharah. And D.Va will zone a flyer out for a few seconds while your team decisively wins a fight. Your team is not decisively winning fights because teams are not decisive on ladder at the middle of the ladder. So for the middle and bottom parts of the ladder, that would be a plague. The middle part of the ladder is overwhelmingly where the majority of the player base is. That's probably not really the solution either. Some of this gimmicky stuff, like, oh, maybe a couple specific Koth maps, or some of this stuff we're like, oh, undiveable, doesn't really work in the modern era either. So now we have to look at double shield, which is, again, where she should be healthy. So do we look at this and go, okay, is the issue this interplay, we could move back to dive for a second, is it this interplay between Zen and Tracer, where every meta seems to want to work its way towards Zen because Zen is just so good? Goat works its way towards Zen. Dive works its way towards Zen. Poke tries to work its way towards Zen. Is Zen just so good? And the answer to Zen is Tracer, and the interplay of the value of Zen and the ability of Tracer to check Zen. And hey, Mercy just can't peel hard enough for Zen, so Brig. So is it really like an interplay of those two necessitates Brig? And the issue is that Zen is too powerful with that trade-off, or maybe Tracer is too powerful and the ability to take Zen down too frequently, even when Mercies are trying to peel, which, by the way, means your Zen isn't good enough. I said it. Is that what's going on? Is it a case of, hey, BAP is too powerful, BAP is just too durable here? Is it a case of Brig is too good? Like, Brig is doing 1.5 times. This Lucio is only in one of the 3 major archetypes. Brig is in 1.5 of them, in terms of her, how often she gets played there. Is it that she is too powerful? You could hit Brig with a nerf. Would that bring Mercy in here? Well, I don't think hitting Brig with a nerf would bring Mercy meaningfully into our poke comp. So I think we'd still be looking at Zen BAP. It might bring her into dive comps more often, but then we've sort of got Brig being homeless. We're like, unless we're in the delete Brig crowd, you don't really want to make space for Mercy by going, we're just going to dumpster Brig for a while and then we can flavor of the month, buff her back up later. Because if we're willing to do that, well, if we want to flavor of the month buff it, we can just make Mercy have instant reses and, put it on a 15-second cooldown, and what do you know? Mercy will be meta again. Or you can make her heal 80 health per second. Mercy will be meta again. You can make Mercy damage boost 45% instead of 30. Mercy will be meta again. We don't need those broken buffs. We'd still like the game to be balanced in a way that makes sense here. So I think the place to go from here is you actually have to attack BAP. You actually look at BAP and go, this is degenerate. This Zen plus BAP support line is degenerate and can't be allowed to exist without just being too greedy. So what can you do to it? Well, maybe you could decrease its damage output to the point where Mercy damage boost becomes more attractive again. You could potentially do that. That might be part of it. But I actually think the first place I'd go is I'd make it less durable. I'd make it so that you actually have a gradient where it makes sense to go, Mercy hardens this line enough, hardens the bulk of this support line enough while decreasing its damage only a little bit to make Mercy a meaningful pick. Might you still, if the opponents are on full dive, rotate into that Brig? Yeah, you might. But if you could create a place where Mercy is making that backline meaningfully bulkier than Zen BAP is, while only being a little bit worse damage, that would do it. And One of the ways to make it only a little worse damage is, again, to give her one-shot mechanics that she enables. I don't think we're going to get many of those back. I think they watched those a little too closely at this point. You can see with how they've nerfed Discord Orb, with how they nerfed the Ashe Mercy combination, that seems unlikely. So I think the place that we're going to instead have to go is go after the bulk. And I really think the easiest, simplest answer here is to just take a look at BAP and say, hey, Regenerative Burst, you're too powerful. Let's start by cutting you. You currently heal BAP for 150 HP and teammates for 75 HP. Let's cut down the self-heal to 75 HP. I mean, with Lucio, he self-heals himself less than he heals his teammates. So maybe we even need to go that route and say, hey, you self-heal yourself less than you heal for teammates. But at least to start, let's cut it down to that same 75. Let's cut it in half, the self-healing that he gets out of that. Truth is, there may even be room to delete the ability. Would that make BAPs unhappy? Would that make BAP feel worse to play? Yes. Yes, it absolutely would. But, so what? Is kind of my response to that. BAP is a good hero. BAP is a very good hero. BAP would probably need a buff to compensate for that. Maybe that buff is something like when he drops his window, he gets healed to full health. Maybe it's something like, hey, he gets a little bit more damage, or maybe it's, hey, we get rid of the silly timer that they added to his Exo boost where it's got an internal cooldown before he can use them again. Like, there's different places you can go with it. I don't matter. He might need a compensation buff if you were to delete it, but the place I'd start would be, let's nerf Regenerative Burst to only heal him as much as it heals his teammates. That might not be enough. I'm not convinced that that is enough, but that at least gives Mercy a chance to go, can I find my way back into poke comps that isn't just on the coattails of Flyers and Snipers? Because if it's got to be on the coattails of Flyers and Snipers have to be powerful, and Flyers and Snipers being powerful isn't something that most of the Overwatch population falls in love with. So let me know what you guys think. I expect to get some hate from this one. I expect to get some level of the, oh my goodness, BAP would be terrible without, Regenerative Burst. And again, I'm saying let's start by knocking it down to 75 HP. And I know a lot of people who are in the I do hate BAP crowd would have said, no, go after Lamp, but that's too integral to his identity. I don't think that's happening. So let me know what you guys think. I'm going to catch up on chat now. For those of you who haven't already seen it, this is a series that has been revived now, but I think I'll be continuing. The first one was the Why Can't Genji Be Meta? This is Why Can't Mercy Be Meta? Let me know in the comments and such what your thoughts are in terms of, did I get this one right? Do I actually need to nerf Zen because Zen is too good and the Zen Tracer Brig dynamic is doing things? Or throw in the comments which hero you want me to cover next. Which hero that doesn't seem to get enough time in the meta. Maybe Lucio, for example. Maybe Hog, for example. Things like that, what would it take for them to be meta? Let me know. But let's go ahead and catch up on chat. So Themitic opened with delete Brig, drops mic. And Blah responds with delete Lucio first. Oh! That was, I don't even know what that was. Probably someone following on Twitch. That's probably what that was, which we'll take. Okay. Yeah, we got a follower on Twitch. We'll take it. Okay. Is the reason because most people in EU have a terrible experience with a Mercy player throwing and ruining their games and confirming that Elo's real? I don't think that's the reason, Plot. I don't think that's the reason. Brig ruining the diver's fun. Could be, Semitic. Could be. Widow metas are lame. Okay. You feel like Widow is a hero who is always going to be a little too good or too bad. I just don't think a hero like Widow should exist. I don't know that that's true. I can get the I don't know that Widow should exist thing, but I think Widow can be relegated to enough of a specialist role that it's like, hey, when Widow's in a place where there's like 4 maps that you want to play her on, but she really makes a difference on those 4 maps in a map pool of like 20, I got no problem. Similar to how I had no problem when Mercy's role was mostly as a, hey, I'm going to support Widow on Widow maps, or I'm going to support Pharmacy on Pharmacy maps when that was a thing. you're mostly finding that Widow is weak enough that it just doesn't make sense. And again, BAP is good enough, Zen is good enough that you don't really want their Mercy, that sort of thing. In those places where you do want the Widow, though you'll sometimes still see her. And then again, that pharmacy hasn't really been a thing that's fallen off in terms of, I'm not saying that there isn't any pharmacy play, there is some pharmacy play. We've obviously seen that on ladder and such, Yixna, but I am talking about, like, it used to be pretty common that, hey, these are like points, Koth points that you just play pharmacy on, which could also sort of work. If the game is balanced by the maps, I can actually live with that, and I don't mind having, oh, run ruins. Okay, Widows get to go ahead and flex here. We're on Havana. Widows get to go ahead and flex here. We're on Junkertown. Widows get to go ahead and flex here. But Widows aren't doing squat on Lijiang Tower. Widows aren't doing squat on Numbani. Widows aren't doing squat on, and you see how this goes. Okay. And not doing squat is a little bit exaggerated, but really, not terribly helpful. Did I see the recent Reddit post by Anima on Fundamental Overwatch? It's really long. I was wondering whether you intend to go through it on stream. I probably will. I couldn't today because I was doing other work. I had coaching work to do. I'd prepped this video yesterday, or I'd prepped for this one yesterday, so I wanted to do it today. We'll probably get to Animas, but I obviously won't swear to that at this point. To support throw comp, sure. The solution when your support is Lucio Mercy is to just report them for throwing. When it's yours, I mean, they might as well be. They effectively are. They're both being incredibly selfish if they're actually walking out of spawn on that support comp, and you're not actually running, like, literally this comp right here, the undivable comp right here. Like, it's very, very selfish. I've seen people call it greedy, and to me, greedy is something like Zen Ana, something like Ana BAP, something like Zen BAP. Those are greedy. Lucio Mercy is just selfish. It's we don't want anyone to take us out. We want to be safe from the divers. We want to be safe. Okay, but you don't do enough for the team and you're anti-synergistic. But again, if you're on the other team, your solution, if you're playing into Lucio Mercy, is literally to just shoot the tanks and DPS. They will not keep up on them. Just do consistent damage against the tanks, for example, and they will be very, very unhappy and you'll win. Here's like Pharah are hard to approach and balance. Like, it would be cool to make her feel good on her own, but imagine a Pharah who feels good on her own without a Mercy. Yeah, well, it's called Echo. I imagined it. It's called Echo. The removed nerf regen burst movement must gain traction. I'm glad you saw it, Semitic. I'm glad you saw where I was going. I'm glad you saw where I was going. You get Lucio Mercy, you just get the opportunity to go crazy on Soldier. Less fun for tanks, but I guess the tank answer to that is Roadhog. But hey. I think the game needs more one-shot mechanics. People are okay when they get hit by a skilled shot and it insta-gives them. It helps Mercy since she can res that. Yeah, I hear you. I don't know that people are okay with it. I don't think people, for example, I've actually heard people go, Doomfist is fine with them because he commits in and therefore he's punishable if he messes up. Whereas if Widow messes up, she loses nothing. Now, she hasn't actually lost to nothing. Her positioning has given up. She does have a meaningful recharge time. It's not like seconds long, but a meaningful recharge time between shots. So she didn't really give up nothing, but I understand what they're saying of the risk to someone who one-shots you across the map is much lower than it is to, say, Doomfist, who did commit into your team where he's potentially going to get 1v4 if he messes up, that sort of thing. So I don't know that most people actually have that stance, Blah. I think most people don't like getting one shot. I really do. Just like you tell a tank, like a tank with a Reinhardt with a Zarya bubble goes, yes, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to push past this choke and swing twice, and they just get instantly deleted by damage plus bash plus Discord orb, whatever, and it's like, well, you shouldn't have pushed past the choke, dude, and it's like, well, yeah, you're right, but, like, that sucks. And I think that's most people's view on one-shots. We don't want a Mercy meta. Delete this video. I mean, there's a lot of Mercy players, Tyler. There's a lot of people. She's such a popular hero. She's such a popular hero to one trick. Yes, there's absolutely plenty of people who also really don't like her as a hero. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of people who don't like her as a hero. But given her popularity, it's a little surprising that she is the least played from a meta standpoint of the, from a professional meta, from even a top of ladder meta standpoint of the main supports. Okay, Brig needs more damage. They should upgrade her rocket flail with something more substantial. Okay, now you're just in full troll mode. Full troll mode. Semitic says, I really want to try to balance BAP without hitting his gunplay. Some may say Immort makes BAP who he is, but in my opinion, it's really his gunplay. I'd say those are the two things. I'd say you could completely rework, get rid of, change window, change it out for a different ult, and that's still his identity, no problem. But I'd say the two things that make BAP who BAP is are his weaving, his left click versus right click stuff. So he does have to have that. And then the other thing would be the immortality field. I think those are the two things that make his identity. If you wanted to argue one more than the other more than the first, doesn't really matter to me. But as long as gunplay is sort of the core of his thing, Exo Boots really does fit the hero. So even though Exo Boots is like an extra ability, it's like, wait, we had to give him control, we had to give him an extra button in order to fit this ability on here. That's a sure sign that you've ability creeped. You're in DLC hero territory. Even though you had to do that for Exo Boots, I don't think Exo Boots is what you remove. You could go, hey, his weapon play. I mean, they did nerf the healing it does by decreasing the amount it heals indirectly for an AoE standpoint. And you could, in theory, go further with how much you decrease his left click damage. And that could work. If you decrease his left click damage by enough, then the Mercy boost becomes potentially more attractive comparatively speaking. But then some of his dueling by himself stuff becomes really rough when, like, okay, he's better than the Tracer who showed up, but he can't drive away the Tracer type thing. Again, so you want to be a little bit careful there. That's obviously counterbalanced by, oh, well, you could make regen burst stronger, that sort of thing. But I don't think that's the right direction for him. I think you want your flex DP, your flex supports to be a bit more frail, like Ana is, like Zen is, that sort of thing. Moira's the outlier, but Moira pays for it by having no utility. Okay. Should Ashe's one-shot with Mercy come back? Maybe it'll help Mercy through that pairing, or would it make another unhealthy meta? Maybe a meaningful buff to Pharah. Meaningful buff to Pharah would help. Having the hit scan nerf in some ways was a meaningful buff to Pharah. Ultimately not really enough as we saw over time, though it did see some play for a while. I think Ashe's one-shot mechanic coming back is perfectly fine, honestly. I think a one-shot mechanic that involves two characters, it certainly doesn't bother me. The truth is, even at the time, it didn't bother me. I might have considered an Ashe nerf at the time that Ashe was pretty powerful back when we were in effectively this meta. I might have considered an Ashe nerf, but honestly, I don't think Ashe was carrying this meta. I think if you look at this, yes, Ashe has been nerfed, and Echo has been nerfed, and Tracer has been nerfed, and Zen has been nerfed since then. Like, lots of people were nerfed to, oh, wait, the meta didn't go away. This is basically the meta that we're, sort of back to. The meta is somewhat flexible. You'll play Brawl on Brawl maps. Double Shield is probably more powerful than people are giving it credit for, but Zen Ball's seen a lot of play since Owl ended. Even Shanghai was running it at the end of Owl. I don't know that I look at this and go, hey, Ashe was too powerful when she had the one-shot. You could say that she was. I certainly wouldn't mind restoring her one-shot now that she's had the fall-off range happen, because she's going to be, like, that one hurt her. But even when she had it, I actually think she was probably the standard that you wanted DPS heroes at. I understand some people say, no, that is too powerful for DPS heroes, the standard that she was at when she had the one-shot mechanic and pre-hit scan nerf. But I would look at that and say, even if you did want to nerf her, I probably would have said, add a second to the coach weapon cooldown. Further decrease the damage on her hip fire weapon, or decrease the damage on TNT or something like that, rather than take away the one-shot mechanic. But that's just me. That said, this one-shot mechanic wasn't enough. Mercy saw like 1/3 of the playtime of Brig in organized play. So like even when this one-shot existed, even when Echo was stronger. So that's not the answer right there by itself. A strong Widow, like a Widow that was as strong as Widow at her strongest, with a shorter grapple cooldown, faster recharge on full power shots, and having her full health again, that absolutely is strong enough to force Mercy into the meta, because if Widow dominates games, Mercy works. That's how things happen. But just Ashe having the one shot probably wasn't enough to do it. If you had both of them in play at the same time, again, for sure, Mercy is going to do it. Okay. A video for Lucio Bastion would be cool. Oh, Bastion. Oh, okay. No, Ready? Lucio cannot be meta. That could be fun. Bring back Mass Res. Mass Res isn't really healthy. Hide and Seek isn't healthy. Hide and Seek wasn't even the way the game was played at the very top. It's just the way the game was played for most of ladder. Yeah. Tempo Reses were better, but yeah. Wouldn't Moira be more selfish than Mercy? Sort of. I say no, and the reason that I say no is if you give me Moira plus Mercy or Moira plus Lucio, a tank can work with those things. A tank can work with having a Moira. The tanks literally can't do anything with Lucio Mercy. They're just like, nope, there's nothing for us to do but not play the game, maybe until our pharmacy does enough damage that we can go in and dive on them. And honestly, that's not likely to happen if the other team, is putting any damage out, has sustained, that sort of thing. Like, the tanks literally just are like, they are not playing the video game until a significant amount of poke has been done, which takes a really long time, because you're looking at something like this where this poke is not good. Maybe you swap out Tracer for a soldier, but your tanks still are not playing the game. Oh, well, you could play Orisa. Orisa and Lucio have anti-synergy. It's really, no, not a thing that you want. So I'd say not more selfish, because at least you have enough, you have ways to play the game. Lucio Moira can play very fast. Moira Mercy has a support that helps tanks and a support that helps DPS. You could say Lucio Mercy also has a support that helps tanks and Lucio, and a support that helps DPS and Mercy, but tanks can't work with just a Lucio. They need a little bit, they need some throughput as well. Or they need the game to happen fast enough. Like Ball and D.Va and Sigma are perfectly happy to play with Zen Brig, which, doesn't deliver as much healing as Moira, but they're perfectly happy to play with it because they can win fast with Discord Orb, etc. Okay. Well, I learned her, no peel. Sure. Nerfing regen burst can probably happen. It wouldn't change his BAP's position in the meta, though, in my opinion. Nerfing it can probably happen, which is why I have the more extreme stance of also deleting it. Deleting a character may be too much, but deleting an ability? He doesn't need compensation for it being deleted. Again, he might, and if you gave him compensation, something small, like when you drop window, you get healed to full, or, something like a bigger clip, something small as compensation, sure, but heck. Getting rid of the Exo Boot cooldown, whatever. Right, just shoot Doomfist. I really don't think there's anything that would make Bastion meta other than a rework, which he's already getting. I don't like the direction they are running with it in Overwatch 2. I think his tank form is so fun. I can see that. His tank form is fun. Doing rocket jumps with tank form is fun. Any hero can do the 500 damage to get through that Zarya bubble, and his shield that can get him 300 health. Would much prefer if they made a tuned down version of Bastion tank his main form rather than scrapping it all together. Okay. Except Kree. He had no answer to that, but now it can roll away in midair. Kree is fixed. Yes. The aerial roll was the fix to Kree. No, it was not. Okay, really what I want to do with Mercy is change Res into a cooler ability, but I get it's too heavily tied to her identity. Yeah, like if you instead wanted to make her a poke support in a different way, you could go Res is no longer her poke peel. Instead, when she has her beam on someone, that person gets like a little mini Orisa shield in front of them, or maybe just a little mini Orisa shield just in front of their head so they can't be headshot or something. Something like that, where hey, she's protecting them against poke. She's peeling the poke win condition. She's peeling poke off of them in a way that's more than just, hey, I'm healing them, which all supports do. You could do something like that, but I think Res is too tied to her identity. Reaper and Moira meta one day. Blizzard continually buffs them and not a thing changes for them. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, we've had a Reaper Moira meta, 6-man. You can run Moira and Reaper in 6-man perfectly competently. Moira gets run in 6-man, and Reaper, you pick between Tracer, Sombra, Reaper, and with bans we've seen Echo in there, but mostly Tracer, Sombra, and Reaper. You pick between those three for that comp. I can get behind getting rid of res for something like a protection ability or something, although a protection ability might be more tied to a tank's identity. Could be, could be. Hanzo needs a buff to help him since he has trouble one-shotting things. He does. Maybe Storm Arrow needs to do full damage so he can one-shot things with it if he hits headshots. Maybe that's the buff he needs there, blah. Darn cover, why should it stop a sniper? What do I think of Egoist Cat's content? I think his videos and streams on Organized Play are super ahead of the curve. I think Egoist Cat is pretty good. I think Egoist Cat does a good job and has a very good understanding of the game. I don't like sometimes that Egoist Cat renames things that don't need to be renamed. It sucks, but you might come up with concepts for something, names for something independently, and then the Overwatch coaching community or the Overwatch whatever gets there, comes up with a different name for it, and that different name is what sticks. And I think some of that has happened with Egoist Cat, where like Egoist Cat went, no, I don't like win conditions, I like solutions, because win condition is overused. And I'm like, okay, but you've described win condition again. Like, people misusing the term win condition doesn't mean I seed the ground of this is what a win condition is and I invent this new thing called a solution. Like, no. No, I'm gonna pass. And I can say other videos like that from Egoist Cat as well. Overall, Egoist Cat has a solid understanding of the game. I'm not going to be like, oh my god, you're wrong on most of his stuff. There's a couple things that I would fight him a little bit about, and maybe we'll get together for a stream at some point and do that, but I definitely respect the guy. But I do go a little bit like, hey, it sucks. I've run into those things too. I think it's silly that we call counter dive diving your own backline, for example, once it gets dove, when I would have liked, counter dive to be the terminology that we use for, hey, they dove our backline and we need to dive their backline in response. Hurry up and dive them, counter dive them, that sort of thing. I would have much preferred peel dive be the name of the concept for our backline gets dove and we will dive to peel for our own backline. But I just have to accept that, you know what, this happened. Counter dive is what we call it when you dive your own backline to deal with divers that have come in there. Okay. Ash's one shot didn't bother me a lot. Damage boosting, the TNT booping away a tank, diving tank felt worse. Sure. Of course, that sounds like you playing tank there, Semitic. Yes, her one shot that can't one shot tanks didn't bother me, but her knocking away tanks bothered me. Huh. I wonder which you were playing. Okay. Nah, they can delete characters. They did it for Owl. Okay. Tank form really is a solid DPS ult. It's just the rest of the kit is the problem. Tank form is fine. Tank form isn't really bad. Tank form does a good job of sort of inverting what he can do, letting him play a bit differently. And that can fix his kit a lot, but tank form isn't up all the time. So, yeah. So they've tried to fix that by giving him an ability that's different, that is sort of like a much weaker tank form to try to fix his kit. We'll see. Looks like I'm late to the stream. Can't wait to watch this video tomorrow morning. I hope you enjoy it, Jacob. Why does Cassidy still have 225 HP? What was even the purpose of it? I didn't play the game when this patch happened. To give him more bulk. The idea is Cassidy is supposed to be an anti-flanker and anti-dive component. It gives him a little bit more in that. It makes him a little bit more of a brawl poke hybrid rather than just a poke hero. It does make him better at fighting divers. Don't get me wrong, that extra 25 HP basically makes it so that it's no longer a skill matchup with Genji, for example. It basically gives him a solid lead in the Genji matchup because that's just how those are breakpoints that got hit. So the idea was, hey, make him fit a little more into brawl, make dive a little bit easier to shut down because, once again, people don't like getting dove. The same reason we got Moira, the same reason we got Brig. People don't like getting dove, and they want to be able to go, I can solve this. Now, Cassidy still can't solve dive all by himself. He can solve a flanker, but Cassidy in the past was never anti-dive. He was anti-flanker because he would still just get instantly blown up if a dive happened. And still, if a dive happens to him, he will get blown up, but if a dive happens on him while he's with other people who can help protect him, he's not just going to get blown up a bit. The other part of the justification would be his hitbox is a little bit bigger than average. Instead of one res every 30 seconds, she should be able to use res every 5 seconds, but only during Valk. No, thank you. No, thank you. She would be meta. Res every 5. Well, hold on. If we're talking the res that she currently has, where she has to float around and take a moment to res people and almost stay still for it, maybe not. But if she had the res that is just like, nope, instant res or iframe res, a res every 5 seconds during Valk, even with a 12-second Valk would, no. I'm assuming that she'd be able to get 3 reses in. If she could really only get 2 reses in, maybe not. If he redefines Blue Box, Temporal will ban him and his content. Nah, he's fine. He's fine. Yeah, he talks about ingredients instead, despite win conditions and ingredients being pretty much the same thing. I really liked his collaboration with Spylo. Yep, I saw that one. Favorite concept of his is that you should really never be on the defense end of a fight. You don't want to be caught on your own downtime. You should never get caught on your own downtime, but defense and offense, like, you can be on defense. Some people... I'd say there's almost like 2 main theories. This is a real big tangent, but there's almost like 2 main theories, I would say, of... Not like the only 2 main theories, but 2 big theories that people get into for like how they drive the game are you going to go, we want to go first? We want to put emphasis on going first because going first can sort of cover for our mistakes and it forces you to react. And if you don't have the right solutions and you don't apply the right, the right answer to each spot and mess up, you're going to lose. If you do everything perfectly, you might win because we might have overextended. But like, there's that element of like going first is really, really powerful and good. And then there's the element of like, no, defensive concaves are flipping amazing. Map control is awesome. And we're going to let you force yourself into a mistake because the longer this fight goes, as we've held decent positioning, as we were appropriately taking defensive positioning, the more we don't care that your nano monkey that has primal in the back pocket jumps into us because we have the angles to handle it type thing. So we're happy to let you go first. Like, there's sort of a little bit of a battle between those ideas. The best is, of course, to combine them and do both of them, but you can't truly optimize going first if the opponents can go first you by just going straight in rather than setting up angles, that sort of thing. So, like, there's a little bit of a battle that happens with those. Never be on the defensive end. That's how I got there. Right. So, I don't know. If I'm on the defense because I've properly set up my concave and, you're push one side of my concave and my whole concave rotates to adapt to that, I don't really mind being on the defense. But if you mean in the, hey, I just don't want to get jumped, I don't want them to start the fight when I'm not in a place where we're pressuring them, where we're pressure cooking them. Sure, you don't want that to happen. But you should also never really have downtime. And I've talked about that in my phases of a team fight video, or what you should be doing in the cleanup, where fights have a poke phase, they have a mid-fight or brawl phase, they have a cleanup phase, but then out of your cleanup phase or your stagger phase, you're actually already pushing into your, hey, pre-poke phase, and then from our pre-poke phase, we're maybe falling back into a setting up for our choke, setting up where we want to fight phase, back into a normal poke phase type thing. So there is no, you're always doing something. Genji is so horrible to play nowadays, it's depressing. Blizzard always seems to just let him fade away to the side and doesn't seem to be bothered to solve his issues. I've got the video, man. I've got the video. You can check it out. I linked it in the description on the below on this one, but I hear what you're saying. Genji is in a sad state. Why can't Rein be meta? Rein's been meta recently enough. Like, I could do a why can't Rein be meta thing, but honestly, that would be a little weak because while Rein's not meta right now, Rein has been meta recently enough, and Rein is still okay on his maps. Blocking her ability don't seem silly. Agreed. Maybe just a res recharge when you use Valk. I mean, that was part of the overpowered Valkyrie. We had what? Valkyrie was 18 seconds, I want to say. It ended your res cooldown. It gave you faster reses. It gave you charges of reses. It gave you, or no, it didn't give you charges of reses. It gave you a shorter res cooldown, so you could res someone and then use Valk, get your free res, then be on a 10-second cooldown to get another res off. You could have like 3 eliminations before the first real elimination if Valk was available when the first pick happened. It got a little silly. Wouldn't be upset if they buffed Valk. I wouldn't be upset if they buffed Valk either. You could make Valk's... The problem is, you could buff Valk's duration and it would bother me 0. You could buff how much healing she does during Valk, but I wouldn't love that because I think it would teach people to use Valk wrong. Like, I think it is right that you want to try to blue beam as hard as you can during Valk, and I don't want to teach that to be wrong. Could you make blue beam better during Valk than it is? Yeah, you probably could, and I think that's probably an okay balance thing. I don't think we're too worried about, oh, this creates breakpoints that we don't like during an ultimate. Like, yeah, okay, Valk's going. Like, Supercharger creates a ton of breakpoints that we don't like. So you could probably buff Blue Beam there, or you could buff duration on Valk. I wouldn't make Valk be charge any faster. Valk already comes up plenty frequently enough. We had that Sonic. It was called the Moth Meta. It did a lot more than... Yeah, right. There's ways to buff it like it was that were bad for the game. I think it exists on the fact that you assume you already have angles when committing, or you have the ingredients for a successful fight. Sure. No, I get it, Dog TQ. But again, it's a how hard are you optimizing in a go first direction versus a... I'm perfectly happy to pressure you forever until you make a mistake. Like, if you're a poke team playing against a dive team, sure, eventually you'll go in and commit on the dive team and press W on them, but especially if you have objective control, you're pretty willing to go, hey, until we're really sure we've won, we're pretty willing to just keep this poke phase going in a lot of situations. We don't really need to start the mid-fight that aggressively, so, But I get what you're saying, Doug T. I think it exists on the... no, I said that. Did you happen to see Holy Shift Kid's video on a potential Brig rework? You know, I saw it got posted. I haven't seen the video. I haven't actually seen the video yet. I've seen some of his other work. I haven't seen that one. Struggling to find that video on Genji? Can you help me out? I can. Let's just go ahead and go like that. And go like that. And that should take you right to it. I'm pretty sure I linked it in the description below, but maybe I'm wrong. Though I was pretty sure I got it. Cool. What if Valk gave a BAP lamp effect on anyone who had a beam attached to them? That'd fix Mercy. That would be an example of, oh, people just cannot be eliminated during Valk. Well, yeah, that would force her into the meta. That would be an example of, oh, we can just absolutely break her from a numbers perspective, which is effectively what you're doing. And yes, she'll be meta. You'd run her in Brawl Cups, even if Brawl was hard meta, if she could do that. Or you could Overheal and Valk, it'd probably be temporary HP that slowly decays after a short period of time, or both. You could do some overhealing, but again, how much? How much? Can people have 50 overhealed HP, 75 overhealed HP? Do you heal up to that 50 or 75 at the same rate you do normal healing? Or do you have to apply twice as many points of healing to get each overheal point? Like, how is that going to work? That would be a question. Yeah, I think the passive advantage, poke teams hypothetically could poke forever until they have the ingredients to commit. A dive team would have to play disruptively to counter that. Something along those lines. I don't want Overheal to come back. I'm too broken. Okay. Okay. I think we've covered most of what we needed to there, most of what's interesting. If people have more thoughts that they want to throw up, you can throw them up in chat, and I'll circle back to them one more time here. Actually, I did a Reddit post. We can jump over and check out the Reddit post to see if it's got in comments, hate mail, love letters, whatever the case may be here. Great breakdown of many of the key elements on what makes a meta, at least for top tier play. I distinctly recall using Mercy to help Genji get Blade faster in a meta, or that might have been L1 season dive or the World Cup. Yeah, I wouldn't really count some of the World Cup stuff because I'm going to be honest, most of the World Cup teams weren't even as good as contenders teams. Yes, the key countries, if you look at South Korea, if you look at China, if you look at USA, if you look at UK, if you look at France, absolutely. Those teams, good enough. No, Canada, good enough, no problem whatsoever. Those are good enough to be contenders or in some case, OWL level teams. But too many of the regions, especially in the qualifiers, were weak enough that it's like this is no. I don't care that they're using teleporting bastion strats. Teleporting bastion strats can be awesome, but I don't necessarily care that they're doing that. Australia had another contenders level team too, actually. They basically fielded the Sydney Drop Bears, which was great. And I probably missed a couple other teams that did as well, but they're not every team was contenders level. Yes, you will sometimes see Mercy used to charge Genji Blade faster, even in small windows of professional play. Those have been small windows of professional play, like we'll do this just for first point attack on Numbani, or we'll do this during the Moth meta, where we are... where she's already incredibly good, or like you could even go back to Apex days where, we're going to take the best player on our team who's our Zarya because no one's any good at Overwatch yet, and we're going to charge their Zarya super fast we're going to use nanos and mercy boost to get as many grabs as possible, which I want to say a top 4 team actually did that as well. I don't think they did that through the full tournament, but they did that as well. So yes, there have been things that have done that, but that's not the norm. And then whatever the case, I would rather she not be meta as a Lucio main who is perfectly fine swapping to main healer characters if needed. There hasn't been a single meta with Mercy that I've actually enjoyed. Well, sure, because you play Lucio, and if Mercy's meta, you're by definition not playing Lucio because Lucio and Mercy are mostly terrible together. Especially since Moth completely ruined the character in my mind. Rather play Goats than deal with Moth 2.0. How did Moth ruin the character? Like, ruins your association with the character, or Valk is terrible and Mass Res was great? I don't love that take. Who needs a rework the most right now? Ooh, good question. Who needs a rework the most right now? Let me take a look. Probably Bastion. Let me take a look at who needs a rework the most right now. Ooh. So, not sure where my Epic Pen went. I must have had that open, but maybe not. Oh, I didn't need it open because I had my drawing tools on Stat Banana. So if I look at who needs one the most, let's go like this. You're a potential candidate. You're a potential candidate. No, sorry. You're a potential candidate. You're a potential candidate. Your sink or swim design isn't amazing. I don't love your design right now. I think her being situational is okay, but she's just not in an amazing place right now. I think Torb's okay. I think Sim's okay. It's just been a little bit eclipsed by Hammond more than I like, but I can live with it. Maybe Zarya. Oh, Genji can't be missed. If I look at this and say who most needs it, probably Bastion or Roadhog. Yeah. And it's probably Bastion because it's Bastion. Roadhog is silly, is basically not going to be ever be terribly likely. Yes, he's seen some metas. He had his pulled pork meta. He had his, I think we called it ballista or crossbow, ice fishing. Ice fishing was what we called it, where we used Orisa, Mei, Roadhog type stuff plus Hanzo. He's had a few metas, but mostly he's never going to be a character that has a ton of metas unless you just make him broken powerful, and he's not really designed well for organized play. Too much of his value is tied into his hook. I've had talked about this before. In theory, he's competing with D.Va and Sigma for a spot. Zarya has this problem to a lesser degree, but he's competing with D.Va and Sigma for a spot, and D.Va and Sigma both have non-committal ways to shut stuff down. D.Va can use a tick of DM. D.Va can shut some things down with DM, other things down with boosters. Sigma can shut some things down with rock. Shift is very committal from Sigma, but even if Shift is on cooldown, he can still shut some other things down with barrier, some things down with rock, that sort of thing. Hog is all of his shutdowns is tied to what's also his offensive ability that he has to frequently use. That doesn't work well for someone that has to compete with D.Va and Sigma. So I would say he needs segmented investment like Sigma has, like D.Va has, like Tracer has, where you can invest part of an ability or part of your value and not be as extreme as he is. But I would say the two ones that I would look at would really be Bastion and then Roadhog. Okay. Yeah, no, I get that the overheal you were talking about would be temporary HP, and it would fall off. I get it. Alongside BAP, which Shield needs to rework the most. Oh, alongside BAP? Brig. Brig is, I mean, Brig or, ooh. If we limit this to supports, who needs a rework? Okay. So the problem that we run into here is I want, let me get a different color because we're on blue for supports already. I would like to see something change for BAP, and I think that's the best way to do this because BAP and Ana fight over space a little bit in a way I don't terribly like. Ana's found her place for now with Nano, with Monkey, occasionally with, hey, let's have a Nano Mercy boosted Echo, that sort of thing. But I would say BAP would be one place that I would look. But the reality is Lucio could probably use a little buff, a small buff. Brig needs a nerf, probably a little one. BAP does need a nerf, in my opinion. Moira just needs to be different. Like, I'm sorry, Moira just has to be different, guys. And again, could you try to make Mercy better in meta without making her broken powerful, just making her more powerful? Yes, potentially, but I think again the ways to do that are mostly going to be silly things like increase her damage boost percent, and that's going to create breakpoints that are almost impossible to break around, and that's almost what you'd have to do to make her compete with a Zen plus BAP support line. Or make her heal more, which is really against her design. You do not want Mercy healing 70 health per second or 65 health per second because she's gonna then start competing with Ana and BAP and Moira for tank healing, and like that makes her more flexible and it does simply make her better, but it's really not the design direction that's healthy for her because again, it'd actually probably just be too powerful because you put 75 health per second on a Cassidy or on an Ashe and it's just like, okay, so you need 2 divers that are better than the Mercy and Ashe, or you need 3 divers to take them down. Come on, what is this? Yeah, I'd say no. So I don't really want to buff Mercy. If I did, it would probably be make the blue beam percent better, but that probably breaks too many things. Safer place to buff would be Valk duration. I think Valk duration is the safest buff that you could give Mercy. Maybe you give her fast res as Invalk again, but she only gets 1 or something. None of this, it goes on a shorter cooldown and she gets it back and type thing. You wouldn't want to, like, other places you could think about is like, let's just remove the cooldown on Guardian Angel, but you wouldn't want to do that. She would be so slippery if you did that. Yeah, Moira needs a rework. So the answer is I could do work. The support cast has work that could be done to it. Needs a nerf, in my opinion. Could probably use a nerf. But then again, maybe this all comes down to Zen needing a rework. Maybe the whole support issue is that Zen needs a rework because the interplay between Zen is just too important to have, and that's why he works himself in everywhere over time, which forces Tracer as the answer to Zen, which really it's not Brig's fault. She's covering Zen being designed in a stupid way type thing. But I like Zen. Totally non-biased. And I think the glass cannon design of Zen is reasonable. And I think we've already nerfed Discord 5%. So I don't have a good answer, I'm afraid, to which one most needs a rework. No, I do. Who most needs a rework really is Moira. Moira's design is just wrong in the same way that Bastion and Hog's design is wrong, quote unquote. Okay. I think France is a real outstanding when it comes to the national teams. I think French players always stand out on French rosters rather than mixed. Perhaps a cultural barrier. I couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you what it was. But, Rogue was good. And we've had some good players from France even outside of that. So, yeah. Unrelated, playing as Mercy with a Genji that is popping off is one of the most satisfying feelings in the game. Diving with them, sure, it's not necessarily it's not actually that amazing. You'd really rather have a soldier, have an Ashe, have a Widow, have a Pharah, have an Echo, but it is fun because you get to move like Genji and get in there and it's exciting. I agree it's fun. It's probably not optimal, but it can be optimal depending on what your options are. If you're playing Mercy or if you're the Genji, it's great to have it. And going in there during his blade absolutely is correct. I don't think ability-based overheal works. So if Mercy got either buff, we'd need to buff Kree to be the only one to handle it. Was I coaching Sydney Drop Bears the time they fielded them for the World Cup? I coached them right afterwards, actually. I coached them right afterwards. That was what put them on my radar and went, yeah, I'd be willing to work Australia time to coach this team. Who needs a rework the most right now? I think I answered that. Probably Bastion, Roadhog, or Moira, if we picked one from each category. Change right click to shoot the rest of the bullets in his weapon, and then the first bullet hits the target. The rest hit anything that's supporting the target. It's just auto aim and fly to them. Let's not do that. Are we upgrading Tac Visor? There's a Mercy Beam in target Mercy. Probably Bastion, but if you don't count him, since he's low franging Hoot Frog. Oh, Semitic came to the same conclusion. Pharah could use some work potentially. Yes, Pharah being so Mercy dependent is rough for her. The problem you run into is, okay, how are you going to do her design space now that Echo has come out without making her feel like another Echo? How are you going to make her independent without making her feel like another Echo? And I don't know, maybe the answer is you give her the ability to stick to roofs, to plant on roofs and recover fuel, something like that. I don't know. You can't give her full-on slide across walls or roofs ability because then she starts feeling like Lucio. We may see a Sim support attempt. We might. I think Sim's relatively healthy how she is right now. She's a little map specific. She can be played on all maps in organized settings with Brawl, but she's a little map specific for her true power to come out. I'd say he isn't even designed well outside of competitive play. I don't know what I'm talking about. Hanzo needs more buffs in Kree 2. I'm playing the Overwatch 2 community patch today. Winston, Zarya, and Orisa need substantial buffs. Well, Orisa without a barrier can't really be a thing. Winston, we'll see. I'm a little worried about Winston, I'm not gonna lie. But I've been worried about Winston is, hey, you're kind of worse version of Ball for a while. Yes, he's a little bit different. Yes, he works well with Ana Zarya combinations. Yes, if you were trying to do a synergy stack to climb, my best choices, my best recommendations for people who were trying to do trios would be Tracer, Hammond, Zen, or Ana, Winston, Zarya. Those would like be the recommendations that I'd make. But he does suffer a little bit from, if he doesn't have exactly what he wants, Ball is just kind of better. Hogmoyer, what happens when you make a selfish hero in a role about working with others to such extremes? Somewhat, yeah. If Bap Zen is allowed to do that much damage, Lucio should have to have the wall ride damage boost to compensate. That doesn't quite add up because, like, Zen's gonna want more survivability. Zen's survivability is nothing like Lucio's. So that's not really fair. You have an argument for, hey, Bap's got reasonably good survivability, not as good as Lucio's, but reasonably good, and does a lot of damage. And okay, now there's a discussion to be had here. And you'll notice my nerf attempt was aimed at Bap, not Zen. Okay, Andrew says, hi Temporal, recently found your channel and content. What about having Moira right click range and damage reduced, but it slows enemies to enable rush to control kite distance? I actually have said for a while that if I were to rework Moira, I would probably make her stuff, her right click, her left click, her orbs do something. You could go, hey, damaging an enemy also slows them down a little bit. Or healing someone also gives them a little bit of damage reduction while the hot is ticking. Or when someone is getting healed by your orb, they do 5% more damage. Or when someone is getting hurt by your orb, they are also being wall hacked. You know, something like that. You wouldn't do all 4 of those, and you'd make them small numbers, like I said there. But yeah, something like that. And her hot doesn't last terribly long, so that's not some huge deal. And you don't need a lingering effect on a right click. It can literally just be while they're being right clicked, and you could pick one of those, some of those, all of those, do what you need to. But yeah, if you want Moira to have some utility, that's where you go. Doing it would promote boosting DPS in 1v1s, but I don't know how it would work for tank interactions. It would make D.Va take very little damage when healed by Mercy. Yeah. What's broken? The glass cannon or the character who makes it a concrete cannon? Tough call. Is it the cannon fault? The cannon's fault? Or is it the concrete case's fault? Yeah. How could Genji change to become usable in organized play? Nerf to Sombra or nerf to Echo are the most direct shots. Those are the most direct shots for Genji. Other ways that you could try to go about it for Genji are going to be, okay, fine, we accept it, we'll break Nano Blade, we'll just decide that Nano doesn't work on Blade cause reasons, and we don't ask you to understand, we just ask it to happen, and then the sky's the limit in terms of, we can make his ult better, we can make his neutral play better, you can do any number of things to make Genji better if you're not worried about Nano Blade. I think they're probably over worried about Nano Blade, truth be told, but yeah. His neutral play can be a little bit dangerous because he can get going with dash resets like wild if his neutral play gets too powerful. So you might want to make his ult play better, or you might want to make him farm his ult a little bit faster, whatever the case may be. But again, Nano Blade concerns. I think they're over concerned about Nano Blade, but that's where they are. Really, though, Echo's a better poke dive hybrid than he is, and Sombra is a better pure dive hero than he is. So nerfing one of them would be the most direct route. Okay. It's funny because Paladins actually has an ability like that. Moira can... I haven't played Paladin, so I don't know. Moira can spend Fade on her teammates to cleanse and give them brief invulnerability. I mean, that's something they've experimented with in experimentals. It's not what I'd have done, but it's something they experimented with, and yeah, that's utility. Referring to the comment above it. Yep. You don't like cleanse concepts from Moira. I'm probably in that same boat of I don't need that either, but it doesn't bother me. It's fine. It's like, okay, that's some form of utility. I can live with that. I I don't know that it's amazing because there's some degree of, hey, I'm pretty cool with Anna saying, oh, Moira, you want to puke healing? No. Play a real, I mean, no, you know, um, I'm okay with that being an answer to Moira just puking healing. Now, Moira doesn't really puke healing and doesn't puke out more healing than Bap or Anna, realistically speaking. Cleave helps, don't get me wrong, but I don't know that I'd have gone with that on her. I prefer my ideas of like, while the hot effect is lingering, they get a small buff, or someone being slown while they're being damaged, or, you know, the orb's doing something, whatever the case may be there. Paladins is like Overwatch, but it feels wrong, and there are more silly things you can do. I believe it. I believe it. Okay. I think that's going to do it. I think I'll hit one last refresh here. If you guys have enjoyed the content, please do drop a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. If you would like to see more content like this, you have a hero that you want me to tackle, again, you can drop that in the comments down below, your suggestion of who you'd like me to do next on this series, and feel free to join our Discord community in the description down there. It's a lot of fun. You can see when I'm going live, when I'm doing these types of things, so you can be here to be part of the discussion. All sorts of good stuff there. But that's going to do it for now, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Temporal out.